Welcome to your Flame Fundamentals training. When it comes to the editorial side of your production, it often happens that the main editorial is done on a dedicated nonlinear editor, and then the final finishing is completed in Flame. Now, to move the timeline between applications, you use an interchange file like an XML, AAF, or EDL. These files contain the structure of the edit, as well as lots of metadata to allow the rebuilding, or what we call conforming in Flame. So you'll cover how to do a conform, and along the way, you'll look at some of the common scenarios and challenges when rebuilding the sequence in Flame. As a reminder, if you have not watched any of the editorial videos, it is still very possible to do all your editing in Flame. When conforming a sequence in Flame, you can use an XML, AAF, or EDL interchange file. For example, for Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, and Adobe Premiere, we recommend exporting an XML. For Avid, we recommend exporting an AAF. All you need is your interchange file and your media to rebuild the sequence in Flame. EDLs are still used today, but they are not as metadata-rich as an XML or AAF. To start the conform workflow, you switch to the conform environment. This interface will eventually display your conform sequence at the bottom, and it will also display an events list containing every source clip used in the active sequence. To import your XML, AAF, or EDL, you right-click on the events list and choose the first load option. This launches a file browser, and you navigate to the folders containing your XML or AAF. In our case, there is an exported XML in this folder, and the required media is in the other folders. Looking at the metadata of this XML in the preview window, you can see bits of information that can be helpful. For example, the resolution of the edit. This is important because the editorial could be working at a lower resolution, and you want to rebuild your sequence at the highest resolution possible. So you could use the resolution from the file, if that's what you want, or you can set a custom resolution. Considering how you can manipulate and debayer multiple formats these days, this is super useful. So navigate to a folder containing some of the source footage. Select one of the files and copy its resolution. The incoming sequence will now be reformatted using this resolution, and it will match the selected source media. Now return to the XML and select it again. Now, as a general reminder, you can conform using the native media for your sequence, but you could also optimize the media on import. If you wish to do that, go to the General tab and enable cache under the clip options. If you choose not to optimize your media during the conform, you can still cache the media anytime you want. Returning to the AAF and XML import options, Flame uses a few mechanisms to search and identify media used in the sequence. Firstly, Flame performs an absolute search. This uses the original file paths embedded in the XML or AAF to locate your media. So if everything was done on the same workstation, Flame should find the media at their original locations and link them into the conformed sequence. This is very straightforward. However, in a lot of cases, media does get moved around, or multiple systems may be used on the production. This means that absolute file paths may no longer be feasible. So the second mechanism Flame uses to find your media is a relative search. This can scan any folder or a structure of folders for your media. The initial search can be folder levels above and below the XML's location. If that doesn't find a match now, you'll be able to search again in any location when you get back to the conform environment. Just so that you're aware, there is an additional tool known as path translation, which allows you to convert file path structures if you have access to the media on the same file system, but your drive mount points are different. This can help with conforming as well as relinking media. If that interests you, I'll post the link to the separate video. Now the relative search looks at every media file it encounters. Sometimes media may be renamed, or a new version of the media is available for the conform. So to help find potential matches, you would open the Match Criteria window, and you can define what properties should be used to find the match for the sequence. You could limit this to a few characters, or be very strict to find the perfect match. So you can search by any property, even though the file path and the name of the media has changed. I am using file name and source timecode for this example. Finally, you can save the conformed media as separate clips in a reel if you want, and you can also consolidate them on import. Click the import button to start rebuilding and conforming the sequence. Once the sequence has been rebuilt and conformed, the sequence will appear in the Sequences reel of the active desktop. Just scroll the media panel to the bottom and you should see a sequence clip. The area above the desktop is the Conform section, and this displays the current media that was found from the initial search. You'll come back to this in a bit. Now your Conform sequence is below, and the events list has populated itself with all the segments from the open sequence. So Flame is displaying a ton of metadata per segment. But what's important at this stage is the status of each segment. There are quite a few linked, and there are others with no match found. In a perfect scenario where everything is absolute, Flame should find and link to everything in one go. Since this is not the case most of the time, let's look at how to remedy a situation like this. Firstly, you will notice that the source timecode and the file name of the missing media is red. This means that based on the search and defined criteria, Flame did not find a match. You could interactively change the criteria and see if that makes a difference. But I think we first need to search in a different place. Now you can search within any area of your project just by going to the media panel and setting that element as the conform search location. So if you imported the media before, you can rebuild your sequence off that. However, to search your external file system, click Search Location and you'll return to the file browser. This time, you can navigate to a folder containing the media, or navigate to a top-level folder with all your subfolders containing the media. To search this folder and all its subfolders, you need to select it in the browser. Click the Scan button. Using the default Set and Scan option, Flame starts searching for the media. The events list looks very different now. Based on the new search, you can see that it has found potential matches which are indicated by the tick icons. If you click through some of the segments, the Conform section in the media panel shows you what sources it has found as a potential match for this segment. In terms of the match criteria, the white highlight indicates a perfect match for most of the segments. The yellow highlight indicates a partial match, but it may still be good enough to link in the sequence. To conform these matches and link the media to the segments, click Link Sources. If you need to search multiple locations for your media, you can repeat all these steps as many times as you need to complete the conform. Finally, another potential scenario is that you could land up with multiple matches for a particular segment. This is also indicated by the yellow highlight on any matched criteria. To choose which of the match sources to use, you go to the Conform section in the media panel and evaluate each of the match sources. Once you decide which one you want, right-click on it and force link it to the segment. Once everything is linked, you can scrub the sequence to verify the edit, or you can choose to hide all the linked sources in the events list. If all the sources are linked, then you're good to go. Please move on to the next video, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the Flame Learning channel. Thanks for watching.